so. Okay.
All right, perfect.
If you guys are all set,
Thank you.
have a good presentation.
Thanks.
All right, well, welcome everybody. Thank you guys so much for joining today. So this is a training to be certified as level 1 cQHEI assessors. So this is a method through the EPA that will allow you to go out, look at your stream habitat, and then the data can actually be used for the EPA in one of their data hubs. And so this can be used for a variety of things like protection of streams or just documenting how the habitat is changing and things over time. So this is a really useful method that we're trying to get used a little bit more frequently. So quick intro, my name's Jenna, Roller-Knapp. I work with Mad Scientist Associates and I help out with FLOW, Friends of the Lower Olentangy Watershed, with their stream quality monitoring group. And we also have Petra on the call through SWAG, the Scioto Watershed Action Group. So we're kind of partnering together to deliver this information to you. This is the virtual presentation component, and then we'll have you guys out in the streams as well, practicing this data collection method before you get certified through the EPA. So to start out, the cQHEI, let's see if I can switch slides here. There we go. Stands for the Citizen Qualitative Habitat Evaluation Index. Sorry, I'm just playing with the way I show that. And so again, this just tells about the infrastructure of the streams, what is the physical habitat that's present. This is based off of a method that Ed Rankin developed in 1989, the QHEI. And this is just kind of more of a layman's terms derivative of that. And so a bunch of these slides are used from MBI's training, that's Midwest Biodiversity Institute's training, that allowed me and Petra and some others to be trainers of this. So yeah, there's a lot of good information here. We're just going to be giving a snippet of it, and we'll try to kind of be timely with it as well to keep this just about an hour. Okay, oops, and I guess I have some animations there that came in. So obviously habitat's really important to the different biota that live in the streams, like this orange throat darter. Okay, so first off, the basics of understanding stream ecosystems. The role of physical habitat, as I mentioned, is very important. This is a component of the Clean Water Act, which protects endangered species. And so there's a variety of things to understand in order to know how do we protect or restore different streams. So first off, why is stream habitat important? Physical habitat loss is the single most widespread cause of aquatic life impairment in Ohio. And so this also influences the chemical nature of our streams. The way that nutrients or sediments are transferred and the volume of flow, etc. So biodiversity directly relates to this availability. And the physical nature of streams influences the water quality. So for example, nutrients can be filtered by the natural stream habitat that's present, whether that's plants or even slowing the water, and that can cause different transformations. Sediments as well can be filtered or stored inside or outside the stream channel, and stormwater also allows, if there's groundwater recharge or floodplains where water can be stored, that also influences nutrient availability. So pretty much the main message here is that all these factors are connected. So we have chemical variables, biotic factors, different energy sources, our flow regime, and our habitat structure. This all affects the integrity of the water resource. So you can look at each of these independently, but you really need to look at all of them to have a good indication of how the water resource is doing. Okay. Let me know if anything changes on my, oops,
There it goes. Oops.
on there, where you guys can't see. Can you still see my presentation?
Yes, but it got small again.
Okay.
I think it's because, oh, now it's gone.
Sorry, I got distracted because I saw a little pop-up.
I think it may be a little weird because they seem to have animation in there from slide to slide.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. Get you over here. And then this one.
I don't think we saw the pop-up for what it's worth. I know
Okay.
sometimes during presentations I get worried about that, so I didn't see a pop-up.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, and if you guys have questions, just feel free to interrupt because I guess I can't really get into the chat and look at those too easily without disrupting the slideshow. Okay, presentation here.
There it's full screen again.
Okay.
Okay, we have the next slide, which has the different purple circles there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Since you can hear, just speak up if there's a question. Okay, yeah, now the other picture's coming great.
Okay. Oh, so I'll show this first. So pretty much the goal of these assessments is to determine the differences between good and poor habitat. So good would be these examples on the left-hand side where we see natural substrates and diverse substrates. The channel unmodified, continuous flow. We often compare these to reference quality streams, and we see that native species flourish there compared to poor habitat, where the habitat structure, is a monoculture or very uniform substrates. Our flow regime might be intermittent or ephemeral if it's been disturbed. Chemical quality may have toxic or enriched features, and often it's, you're having nuisance biomass, and then invasive species can thrive there as well. So we're going to try to understand the effects of one or more of these factors, and so biological data and tools like the cQHEI can provide a way to measure these factors. So physical stream habitat. A natural stream's physical feature are a continuous product of its watershed, including climate, meaning wet versus dry, the stream flow, topography, if it's hilly versus flat, soil and bed material, is it coarse or fine, and then the vegetation. So all this plays a role. And here's just another bullet point list of the things that streams and their biota are affected by. So, climate changes, vegetation changes, the topography, soil and substrate flow, and then the riparian area, what buffer does it have? So in these pictures, you can see some of the erosion. The stream's trying to be a little bit more curvy or sinuous, versus in that picture on the right, we have vegetation growing on the buffers. And so these streams that are just the same over time can score really differently with the cQHEI. So one of the cQHEI sections that you'll need to know about is the depth and velocity of riffle and run habitats. So riffle habitats, these are areas with fast stream flow. The water surface is often broken, so you can see breaks in the water where it's moving quickly. And this is compared to the pool habitats, which are very deep or relatively deeper, and they typically do not have flow. The areas in between there are called the runs. So these have a bit of flow transitioning from a riffle to a pool, but they're kind of an intermediate depth, and you don't see that broken water surface. Glide is a feature that is typically found in modified streams, and so this is a specific type of habitat that it's kind of like a conveyor belt of flow where there's not any changes. It just kind of all consistently moving the same speed, probably similar water depth, as you can see in that picture there too. If you're looking at the biology in the stream, most sensitive aquatic species in streams and rivers are habitat dependent and fluvial specialists, which means that they're adapted to specific habitat types. So this is why when we go out for stream quality monitoring, we try to target all the different habitat types, because there's different species that live in the riffles versus the pools versus the runs and glides, and even those edge margin habitats as well. And here's just a couple diagrams when you're thinking about your stream, kind of noticing the different structures within and around the stream, whether it's substrate or plants, how, where it curves, and where, you might see gravel bars or log jams forming. And there's typically this like riffle run pool sequence that you'll get. And so trying to make sure a couple of those are in your stream reach is really important as well. All right, so typically the size qualifications are that the cQHEI or the QHEI is appropriate for streams with drainage area of 1 square mile or greater, or streams that have natural pools with water depths of greater than 40 centimeters. So you wouldn't want to measure like below a plunge pool of, if you see a culvert running through your stream or things like that. But these natural pools where, if you have greater than 40 centimeters water depth, you can just jump right to this cQHEI method. Some of Flow's streams are less than this, but because the cQHEI does a great job evaluating habitat, we've just included this method for all of Flow's streams. So then we can compare across the different streams. But technically we would be looking, specifically drainage area over 1 square mile or these deep pools to be candidates for the cQHEI method. All right, so benefits of the cQHEI, it's very low tech. And so we'll go over some of the equipment that you'll want to make sure you have with you. Clipboard and cQHEI data sheets, some waders or hip boots, even mucks are fine for a lot of the streams, or rain boots, whatever you guys like. A depth stick measured in centimeters. Funny little picture of a gorilla wading in a stream there. And then often measuring tape or other tool to measure your length zone. You can use a range finder or even your phone and make a couple points, or measure the distance later on your computer as well. And so these are all good ways to make sure you hit your survey reach that you need. And we'll go over those details a little bit later. You can also look at transparency of the water and color. We're going to skip that for this specific portion. Okay, so here's an example of the cQHEI data sheet. We'll have you fill out your header first, make sure you get the date and your name in there and your site location. Then it's good to walk your reach and decide where's your upstream and your downstream point. And making sure that you have those variable habitat types in your reach. So typically you might determine this beforehand based on site access or just measuring your length of reach on the computer, and then you kind of have it set up, and then just make sure you have a couple riffles and a couple pools if those are present in your stream. So you'll walk upstream through the reach, and typically we like to draw the map of the site first. And so that looks like this is the back of the sheet where you'll kind of draw your stream with the different habitat types that you see. And then that makes it a little bit easier to go through your data form and check what was present. I like to make like little dots as I'm walking through, you know, what substrate sizes are there or what fish cover is there. And then you can kind of check those at the end based on your overall evaluation of your reach. So you'll score the cQHEI as you walk back downstream if you want to follow this general protocol. It's flexible based on what works for you. And then you can score it with your stream team if you'd like, or you can each do one individually and then discuss. So repeat scores can provide more information on scoring precision. And so you could feel free to like enter those independently if you wanted. But we'll note that even professionals rarely have identical scores for their stream assessment, but overall, like the category of the stream will generally still be the same. So you know, don't have to overthink each answer too much. Those categories are kind of broken into bins that will correctly categorize the stream. Okay, so the first thing, oh yeah, another detail is that some of those boxes you can double check. So for example, how natural is the site? You may say it's mostly natural and be pretty confident on that. But if you, maybe you're torn in between a couple of these categories, and you can double check those and then average them. So in this bottom example, it says a few minor man-made changes, such as a bridge, etc., or many man-made changes and still some natural conditions left. If you're kind of in between those, you can double check an average to get a score of 7.5. So pretty much you're just looking for the best category for each of those. And then, oh, as far as the QHEI reach distance, so our headwater streams are typically 150 meters long, so about 500 feet. And then wadable streams are 200 meters or 650 feet. So pretty much just long enough to capture several repeats of those major reach and habitat types if they're present. We want to make sure we measure at normal to low summer flows. So we call this base flow when there hasn't been rain for more than, for a minimum of 24 hours, technically. And then we say safety first. So even if you score your cQHEI alone, we recommend that you do not go into the streams alone, just as a safety thing. And then watch for deep areas or slip hazards, other hazards like poison ivy or thorns, all of that. Make sure that you're safe. All right, so macro habitat types include riffle, pool, run, and glide. So it looks like this is just another picture of the different habitat types that you may have and what you might want to include in your picture. And this just kind of shows the conditions at the time that you sampled it and makes it a bit more repeatable for someone else to go out to that same specific area. If you have like a legacy tree, like a large sycamore in a certain spot, or a fence or a path where you accessed, you can include all of that to make it a little bit more intuitive for the next person as well. Okay, so we talked about your stream maps, and this just shows the flow direction too. So typically people will, look at half their stream and make sure that they can fit that all in, and then they have that second half for the upper half of the stream. A lot of times if we just have one large block, then people are so detailed with the first half that they don't have any room for the second half. So this is just a way to make sure there's enough space for both halves of the stream. A couple other pictures here. We'll give you this PowerPoint so you guys can look more in depth or look back at this if you have any questions. But to actually go through the Citizen Habitat Evaluation Index, the first thing we look at is the substrate, and we look at the size of the substrate. So this is all in layman's terms. Is a substrate mostly large, meaning fist size or bigger, or and then it varies down to mostly fine, smaller, much smaller than your fingernail and not coarse. Part B here is smothering, and this is when fist size and larger pieces are smothered by sands and silt. So you may not even know that there's large substrates in the stream until you dig down, probe down a little bit into the sediment. And so this is important because it just kind of, it limits the habitat that different biota can use. Like if it's a darter that wants to be able to flip rocks and get the macroinvertebrates from underneath those, if they're all smothered by sands and silts, which can happen in a lot of our urban streams, then these critters don't have access to that habitat, even though it may be present. And then silting is a description where if you walk through the stream channel, facing, or you could walk backwards upstream, and then if you see your cloud of silt lasting for more than a few seconds, then you know that there is a lot of siltation. A little bit of silt is natural, but that's just kind of like one of the ways to determine if silt is really abundant. So this
just
says,
one comment I found. Are there large pieces? What I initially, when I did this, I just looked, okay, I see a big rock. So what made it clear to me is that you kind of have to look at it like a little fish. If you think about it that way, yes, what you can see is different, but if you think about what can a little fish or a little macroinvertebrate see, so.
Right. Yep. And that's like the term of functional, meaning, is it usable? Is it in the water? Is it actually providing that habitat that type of substrate should provide, and things like that? Yep, that's a good point. So this says clouding of the stream for more than a minute or two. So if you kick it up and you see that silt carrying downstream for that long, then you would say yes, and it would get 0 points. So the more points, the better score it's going to have. So a few pictures there. Water pennies are an example of a group of organisms that prefer larger and clean substrates. So we see that the cQHEI substrate score there on the x-axis of that graph is, as it becomes greater, your probability of finding the water penny increases. So these are a good quality indicator, not only for water quality, but habitat as well. All right, so these all like accessible substrates. Some of the organisms are, you know, like the water penny is a scraper, and these flip rocks. So substrates are really important to them. Oh, okay. And these are a couple more examples. So this one on the left shows like if there's a layer of silt on top, that is kind of like smothering versus your large substrates being on the bottom. I'm sorry, your large substrates being on the top and then those finer ones on the bottom. We see some siltation of that stream going into the river, and then some shiners on the bottom. Okay, so I think we covered that pretty good. I think this is a little video. So you can actually see these fish, you know, turning some of the substrates. Get the gist of that. So fish cover, these are the hiding places present. And with this, you check all that are present. So we have underwater tree roots. These are like the large ones. Boulders, down trees and branches or logs, all really good habitat. Water plants, chest deep areas. These are underwater tree rootlets, and these are like the fine ones. And this is another piece that you'll want to make sure these areas are functional. So that means within your wetted channel, sometimes you'll get these root wads above the water level, and so then they wouldn't count because they wouldn't be able to be used by aquatic animals. We have different backwaters and side channels, or oxbows, if you see those. Shallows, areas for small breeding fish. And then overhanging vegetation is really important too. One other is undercut banks. So if you use your meter stick and you feel under the bank and it is kind of scoured under there, but there's some protection over top, that gets a couple points as well. To distinguish filamentous algae versus aquatic plants, here's a few pictures. So we see the really fine, like just kind of mats of algae versus these leaved plants. We have some pondweed and water willow. So we don't give points for algae, but we do for aquatic plants. And then woody debris is a really important characteristic. It stabilizes stream banks, indicates that there's improved floodplain connectivity, and then provides a more diverse aquatic habitat. All right, our third metric is stream shape and human alteration. So this is the sinuosity of the channel or curviness. And there's a few pictures here. So within your, if it's 500-foot reach, you'll want to indicate, is it very straight? Is there some wiggle, 1 to 2 good bends, or 2 or more good bends? And then how natural is the site? Again, you can double check if needed, otherwise pick the best category as to how much man-made influence you see right around your stream. Okay, so obviously a very channelized stream in the top left picture, a little bit of curve in the second. And so they're getting a little bit more natural there. And then we have, you know, pretty isolated from human influence on the top versus we've all seen these in the bottom right picture where it's not a natural stream at all. So kind of the extremes, and then there's some things in the middle. All right, and this also shows the probability of collecting snails as our cQHEI score increases. We see greater likelihood of collecting the snail Alemia, which is one of the more sensitive snails. Okay, and then as far as stream forests and wetlands and erosion, to assess that, we look at the width of the stream. Are you able to throw a rock through it, or is it pretty narrow? So it can go wide, can't throw a rock through it, narrow, can throw a rock through it, or no riparian buffer. And so that's, yeah, looking at forests and streams. Land use, what's the predominant land use surrounding your stream? And so it could be forest and wetlands, shrubs, parks, row crops, pasture, just urban industrial habitat. Go ahead and use your best judgment for that. And then bank erosion, do you have raw banks with no vegetation and they're collapsing, or are they stable and well vegetated, or kind of a combination of both? Some erosion is natural, but when we get, you know, higher amounts of erosion, then it tells us that the stream is not stable and is, you know, being negatively affected by the amount of water coming through. Also, how much of the stream is shaded. So we have some different examples of habitats here. So you can say mostly shaded for 3 points, or no shading for 2 points, or somewhere in the middle with the partly at 2. And then I'll mention this score box here after you check your boxes for each component, A, B, C, and D. You'll put your score in that top right box, just a cumulative score for that metric. All right, woody riparian quality. It says this affects increase in importance as they accumulate in the watershed. So if it doesn't have it, it's like death of 1,000 cuts. Definitely influences habitat forming functions, bank stabilization, retention and uptake of excess water, groundwater recharge, assimilation of storage of nutrients and sediments, and our temperature modification. So that riparian buffer is definitely important and affects our stream. Okay, so depth and current velocity, how deep is the pool at its greatest? And we recognize that people are at different heights, so these could be variable, but to just make it pretty straightforward, we have anywhere from ankle deep to chest deep. And you can, you know, double check I guess it would just be one measurement for that, because it's just your deepest pool. So how deep is it at the time that you're visiting it, when it hasn't rained in the last 24 hours. And then you can go ahead and check all types of flow that you see Very fast is when it's hard to stand in the current, so that's a bit more rare, especially like urban streams in Ohio if it hasn't rained recently. You can have fast flow, quickly taking objects downstream, moderate, slowly taking objects downstream, and slow, where the flow is nearly absent. Okay, so helpful hints for gauging the current water velocity. Very fast currents are pretty rare in headwater streams. And for any velocity category, we want sufficient area, for example, a square yard, to provide enough effective area for that velocity to support a species that prefers that habitat type. So as we talked about, that functionality of the habitat is very important to saying it's present. Would a species that requires, fast flow be able to live in this little patch, and kind of using that perspective from the critters viewpoint is helpful. All right. And then looking at riffles and runs, these are areas where the current is fast or turbulent and the surface may be broken. And are they knee deep or deeper and fast, ankle or calf deep and fast, ankle deep and or less and slow, or do they not exist? And then in that case, you would get 0 points. And then what are the substrates? Fist size or larger, or smaller than your fingernail, or somewhere in between. Okay, so after you total up your scores from the different metrics, the total possible score is 114. And so we have these different categories. And so based on, all of Ed Rankin's monitoring of streams, these are the breakdowns of the different categories. So we see anywhere from 0 to 49. There's moderate to extensive man-made modifications. So these are somewhat like poor or low scoring streams. If you have a 50 to 60, these streams typically can attain warm water habitat, which is an EPA designation, looking at the biological communities. And then, your flow or depth may be lacking, and that may be affecting your biological community. 61 to 69, these have enough features to attain warm water habitat as well. And then the flow and depth, substrate, and forest canopy are typically intact in these types of streams. And last but not least, scores 70 to 100. These streams are typically capable of supporting exceptional warm water habitat, which is another designation. And these would require, just excellent habitat types present in your stream. All right, so we talked about this a little bit, but this is from Ohio's database. So the cQHEI score there on the x-axis, as that increases, we see more sensitive fish species. And then that dashed line shows where habitat is limiting. Points far under the line may be limited by pollution, mining, stormwater, etc. And as far as like this data being applicable for different purposes, maybe those are candidates for restoration or different modifications, etc. And then we see the same relationship with cQHEI score being related to sensitive macroinvertebrate taxa. So such as this cute little caddisfly in its leaf case. Yep. So kind of similar relationship there. So we'll have you input your data when you're finished. I need to double check with EPA and NBI of their database link, but we can provide that to you guys. And then you can import your cQHEI data. So not specifically your bug data or water chemistry for this, since it's just the EPA level cQHEI. And then overall, typically streams with better habitat have better bugs and fish. But if it has great habitat and not a lot of bugs and fish, then we kind of wonder, is there a pollution issue, or what is the limiting factor for these critters? Because based on all the available habitat, it should be thriving. We also have some future plans to include an extra flood-prone area metric. So this is something that Ed Rankin knows is important, but is not currently in the tool. So as long as we're going through this background information, I thought it might be interesting to include this information, but it's not something that is applied right now. But basic research has identified floodplains and their flood-prone areas next to a stream are very important for controlling nutrients. And so there's kind of like a draft in place right here that may be included in the future. So river left and river right are described as you're looking downstream. So like if you were on an inner tube and floating downstream, you would indicate on your left, there's wide riparian buffer, or there's no buffer. And then you take a look on your right also, and how far that stream could flood and into what type of habitat. So something for in the future that we may include. And then benefits of natural floodplains. Let's see what else. Flood protection, improved water quality, recharging aquifers, improved wildlife habitat, especially reducing fragmentation of these aquatic habitats, recreational industries as well, sustainable agriculture, reduced flood insurance and disaster recovery costs, and then forest management and carbon sequestration. So great for a multitude of reasons. Okay, so a few additional sampling recommendations. Be sure that when you monitor, you're monitoring at base flow or summer low flow, so not within 24 hours of a rain event. And then if it's like a very light rain event where you can see that the water level hasn't increased and it's not extra turbid where you can't see the substrates and everything, that's okay. But in general, that's just kind of our standard period, or our standard window that we wait after a rain event. And then assess only the wetted habitat for the the wetted area for the habitat unless the tributary is dry. Then you can assess all within the bank full width, which is really just where you see like a channel without plants. So you are just trying to see what's typically functional in that stream. And then NBI, Midwest Biodiversity Institute, is working to obtain a grant to create a web-based tool for entering and managing the cQHEI data within the NBI Data Hub. I think this is already established, but we'll double check and get you guys that link. And then this is a great way to empower local users to enter data and see results on the map. So it should be a little bit interactive that way. Integrating with other user data. So like I said, this will go into the EPA's credible database. So you guys will be credible data collectors, or QDCs, and this will house all credible data. And so people will be able to even look at this data. There's level 2 and level 3. So this will be level 1, but it will all be kind of related to the same system. And so if they're looking at a specific stream, and there's no level 2 or level 3 data, this level 1 data is going to be very valuable to informing the current habitat quality. So this is used by EPA, NBI, Ohio Department of Natural Resources, etc. And so overall, the goal of this is to establish the state of the state stream habitat condition, or the quality of the state's streams. And so we really appreciate your guys' time to learn about this program and volunteer to collect credible data. This just ensures you guys have had a little bit extra training and know what you're looking for. And so this data can be used in a little bit further of an effort. So after you do the field component, we'll get you signed up for being a qualified level 1 data collector. And then you'll be able to contribute to community and citizen science efforts. And so, you know, professional surveys are great, but there's limitations with that, such as like funding or time or even interest. So if you have a stream even like near your house, or you know construction's going to be going on or anything like that, you can use this method and assess these streams and contribute that data to the state to kind of be protectors of it and document the current quality. A lot of times, especially EPA's surveys, they try to cover the whole state, but sometimes they don't make a full round until 10 to 15 years. And some of these smaller streams may be overlooked and things like that. So definitely very valuable to collect this information. This data can go toward planning future watershed monitoring. And then NBI plans to develop a state of the state report on habitat and water quality as more data is collected. I think I can read part of this quote on my screen. It says, "The activist is not the man who says the river is dirty. The activist is a man who cleans up the river." And so we'll be sure to collect your names and email addresses and affiliations as you complete this training, so then we can submit that to the Ohio EPA to be certified. So again, we'll be scheduling some different field demonstrations where we'll practice this hands-on and see how everybody's scoring. One of them, I believe, is coming up June 22nd, 1:30 to 3:30. Nice. And we can go over some of that more, but we'll have some more in July as well. Okay, so that is it. Do you guys have any questions?
I don't have any questions, but thank you for doing this on such short notice.
Yeah, thank you for attending on such short notice.
Can you put the group view on, perhaps?
Yeah, and I'll stop our recording here.
Well, keep it.